Thanks, Jackie. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks very much for giving us your time. We hope you see it as an investment in yourselves. We're making a big push over this period of time and for the next few years around the whole aspect of mental health and mental wellness. And I want to give you the analogy of thinking about this area a bit like an iceberg, where normally in swimming, in competitive swimming, we're very focused on the performance psychology, your mindset around training, and particularly when you go racing. But I want you to think that that component is the piece of the iceberg above the surface, the small piece that we can see. But it is heavily supported, and arguably you won't reach an optimal sort of mental performance state without the underscoring foundation of a really solid mental health and mental wellness understanding. And so we've started to put together a whole webinar series that started back in June, starting to talk to particularly the coaches and the adults responsible for running clubs around dealing with COVID and the constant change. And then over the last few weeks, we've been focusing on various age groups of swimmers. You're our third group of swimmers that we've been speaking to. We've spoken to coaches, parents, and even a master's group of swimmers on last Thursday night. And the whole thing is, we often get focused on the physical aspects of training, your stamina and speed, your skills, suppleness, all those type of elements. And we forget that this mental component is so important, and it needs training as well. And can we help you to understand yourselves and your teammates and colleagues a little bit better? And can we provide you with some tools and strategies to help you deal with everything? And many of the things that we would talk to you are pertinent in everyday life, not just in and around the swimming pool. So we've been very lucky to get some support from local expertise through the Canadian Sport Institute and various private entities. And we're very lucky to have Elaine here and today with us Erin Brennan, who are both mental performance consultants, heavily involved with us in Alberta with Team Alberta and specifically around swimming. And we've been working with them and Dr. Frank Vandenberg at the Canadian Sport Institute to develop, if you like, a strategy to help our swimmers, our coaches, and significant adults that are involved in swimming in Alberta. And so without too much further ado, I'm going to introduce Erin to you, and she'll take it away. And I hope you really take some of the things that she will be showing you and start to put them into play, not just in your swimming training and competition, but in life in general. Erin herself, as I mentioned, she has a master's degree in the area of psychology and if you like, performance psychology from the University of Alberta. She's heavily involved in everything from sort of grassroots athletics to, as I said, to Team Alberta and on to some of our nationally ranked athletes in various sports. And she has a professional philosophy that's based upon diverse and exciting learning opportunities. And as I said, she and Elaine, our other mental performance consultant working with us, have put together some packages of information to really help you. And the other thing is, aside from viewing the video perhaps later on once we post it, you can always take screenshots as we go through the presentation so that you understand that this material is for you and for you to use. So Erin, thank you very much, and I look forward to your presentation to the group.
Hi everyone, thanks so much Steve for your introduction today, and I would like to thank you all for taking time out of your Saturday. It's warmed up a little bit, still a little chilly outside, but thank you for joining me today to work a little bit on your mental wellness and take a dive into a different pool of things that you can learn to strengthen not just you as a human being, but you as an athlete. So today we're gathering, and although it's kind of in a non-traditional way with Zoom, I just would like to take a moment and acknowledge the traditional territories of the people of Treaty 6 here in Edmonton, where I'm located today. And I'd like to honor the histories, the language, the culture of the First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and other First Nations of Canada, whose presence not only enriches us, but helps us grow with our vibrant communities and our landscapes and the people we bring together in the same way they have over many decades on this beautiful land. So thank you for joining me today. My name is Erin Brennan, and I grew up in northern Alberta. So like many of you, some of you are located in the cities, some of you are all across the province, perhaps in rural landscapes. So I did start out swimming, not too competitive. As a young athlete, I enjoyed being in the water, and I was fortunate enough to be in a winter club up in Peace River. There's not that many people up there, so my group was pretty small, but I had a wonderful training environment. And I did discover that I perhaps was not the best swimmer, but what I really loved about the sport was the importance of learning such a basic skill that has helped me in other areas of my life. So I spend a lot of time on the water. I love to water ski and surf behind a boat. So you'll often catch me kind of at the lake using water in that way. But now my job, I love being on the deck. I love working with athletes like yourself, and I've been fortunate enough to work with some local clubs and then with athletes across the province with some of the work that I do. So when I did go to school in the field of sports psychology to become a mental performance consultant, my whole degree was focused on how to teach people like yourselves, specifically your age group actually, mental skills. And how do we create meaningful programs and meaningful interaction with you so that you can take these skills and work on them and apply them in the water and out of the water. So I know that many of us, with the challenges of COVID, which we're going to talk about today, we're just craving and itching to be back in the water, and just, never take that streamline for granted ever again. I can't wait to be on the deck, and hopefully I'll get to work with some of you in the future with different camps and different opportunities that Swim Alberta continues to provide us all with. So thank you very much for joining me today. I'm excited to get started. So Jackie, if you could go to the agenda slide, I'm going to share a little bit about what we're going to do. So with mental wellness, there's so many things we can talk about, but what we've prepared, my partner Elaine Hing and I, when we kind of figured out what way we wanted to go with the mental wellness, we thought, we're in a pandemic, we should probably talk about it. But we also understand that you are going through a unique set of challenges with being in school, whether you're doing it online or doing it at home. And that's brought in itself a few bunch of challenges and opportunities for you all. And given our current climate with swimming and such, there's been some things that have needed to change. And we're aware of those challenges and those pressures. So we're going to talk about that with you today. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about what that COVID roller coaster has been like for yourselves, perhaps, and other athletes, especially your age, how we can work through some of these difficulties, what it means to charge our battery in the mental wellness way, talking a little bit about resilience and how to build resilience with what we're going through. And then what are some coping strategies and helping strategies that we can use, not just for ourselves, but perhaps for other people, whether it be our teammates, our family members, when we're struggling with things, what's available and what's accessible to us. So that's my plan today. I do invite you at any time to jump in and ask questions, put them in the chat. I'm going to ask for your feedback on a few things, because to me, when I hear your voices and when I hear what you've been experiencing, it helps me better not only prepare and assist with other athletes like yourselves, but it gives me kind of a real understanding of what you're each going through. And then I can, in my turn, and working with Swim Alberta, we can figure out kind of how to give you the best resources for some of the information and feedback you share. So please know this is a safe psychological space, and I welcome you all to participate as much as humanly possible. So please jump in, write in the chat. No judgment. This is a place where we want to talk and collaborate and learn. Okay. So if you could keep going to the next slide, Jackie, that'd be fantastic. So I have this great little picture here that I'd like to share. We at Swim Alberta and my work with Swim Alberta, our intention with these webinar series is to create a space where mental wellness and mental training come together and provide an opportunity for you to learn about yourself and then the resources that are available to you. And one thing I do want to share is that Swim Alberta has made it a priority for you all to learn and engage and empower your mental wellness in addition to mental performance, just kind of like what Steve said. So addressing both parts of the iceberg that exist in the ocean here. And we're going to focus a little bit on what's under the surface today. And as you can see, this picture is showing a lot of things on top of the surface with these diverse types and sizes of boats. So there's a lot of things happening in our world right now, as you know. And I know most of you are pretty social media tech savvy, so your age group gets information so fast and you know how to find it and it's accessible. And that can be great for a lot of things, but it also is always there and always on, right? So, we have all this going on, and I want to point out that we are reacting pretty normal to an abnormal situation. And it's normal to be feeling a lot of different things right now on our wider range of emotions. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later in the presentation. So we've been in this for a long period of time. We've been in and out of school. You've had many timelines that you've had to be working with, changes to school, changes to timelines. There's so much information coming at you, and there's so much uncertainty. And with that, we all are in the same storm. And a lot of you may have heard the phrase that we're all in the same boat. Well, actually, I don't think we're in the same boat. Elaine and I have shared this picture in these presentations because we think it's important to highlight that we're actually in the same storm. All of us here in this picture are different boats. We come in many shapes and sizes. We have different platforms. We have different resources and accessibilities. Some of us in this storm of COVID have been thriving. Others maybe have had a unique set of struggles. Some of us have been holding on to that raft because we're not good with uncertainty, and we're hoping our life jacket is on, held tight as the storm's coming in. And we've been working through these, whether it be with our families, with our school system. And I think this is a great picture to represent that we all have different experiences in the storm. We all have different strengths and weaknesses, different skills, and different adaptations, just like all the boats you see here in this picture. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Think a little bit about what that might mean to you, given the context of your situation and how you've navigated COVID here in the last 10 months. All right, Jackie, if you wouldn't mind changing the next slide, please. So a couple things that I wanted to point out about COVID is that everyone has experienced different things at different times. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later in a graph that I'd like to show you. So some days we may think things are really great, and then things change immediately to things are just horrible. We might find that there's days that we're struggling more, maybe we're a little bit more emotional, whereas other days we're able to do things and it is smooth sailing, we're good to go. So I wanted to point one important thing. Every single person is experiencing different things at different times. So what does that mean? That means that there needs to be some empathy, because someone else's story is going to be very different than yours. And then that empathy also comes and directs to yourself, and recognizing that there's no how-to guide in this. We never had a how-to guide in our generation for a pandemic. So just being aware of the fact that there's a lot of moving parts, and recognizing it's okay to be where you are right now. Okay. The second thing that I want to bring to your attention is pressure. It's important because everyone will have their different comfort levels in regards to the pandemic, school, even returning to training and swimming. You may have experienced different levels already with your coaches, your teammates, your friends, and family. And pressure plays a really big role here, okay? Some of your friends may follow rules super strictly, some may not. Some wear masks, some may not. Some have different opinions about those things. And this whole situation can be very confusing. It can create discomfort and uncertainty. Even being at school can be very challenging for you. So I don't want you to be afraid to have these conversations with your family and friends, and recognize that pressure does exist. And these discussions about these unknowns and these uncertainties, simply sometimes by having these conversations with different people, it can help you kind of bring some comfort to the situation. So for example, once we do start returning to training, if you need to talk to your coach a little bit about your comfort or ask questions, that's okay. And we want you to ask questions. We want you to be engaged and feel safe. And that's a priority for us. So many of you would had to learn protocols when you went back to school, and there's so much information coming at you. We want you to think about returning to training in the same way in the future, and just be aware of the fact that we know that there's lots going on, and there's lots of pressure in the situation coming in many directions. So just two things to think about, okay? But what does that actually mean? Well, it leaves you with a couple things. It leaves you with a lack of control with any situation, because usually we're not the ones making decisions, right? And number two, we're seeing provinces handle things at different stages. So for some of you who are competing, you may be seeing other people in other provinces doing things differently given their guidelines. So just recognizing what that timeline means for different people in our sport or friend group, different schools across the country. And with schools, I do want to point out right now that we know that this school itself can be an additional stressor for some of you. You know, are you active enough? Are you being overloaded with Zoom and online sessions? We just want you to know we understand that, and some of the things we're going to talk about today can definitely help work through some of those challenges. Okay, next slide, please, Jackie. So what's currently happening right now? I would like to share some sentences and statements and feelings I have heard from some of the athletes I work with. These statements are from athletes who are very similar to your age, not necessarily all swimming athletes, but just across the board with people I work with. So, you know, they don't know when their next competition will be, when they're even going to get in the water or on the ice or on a field, perhaps feeling a little bit hopeless and uncertain about what's coming down the pipe. Some of them are even beginning to resent the type of training they have, whether they're still doing dry land or limited training, depending on where they are in the country. Some of my athletes feel so overwhelmed. And one of the big questions they're asking me is, when will this end? And then the last thing I want to share is the statement, I am so over this. So what I would invite you to do is, I would like to know from you, what are some of the things you have heard? Maybe yourself, you've shared it. What are some of the things you've heard other athletes, teammates, or your friends say about COVID-19 pandemic and sport and where you are? If you feel comfortable, I'd absolutely love to hear what you have to say in the chat. If anyone wants to jump in, just unmute yourself. What are some of the things you've heard people say about our current situation? Maybe about how they feel. Anybody like to share?
I know personally, I'm kind of scared of falling behind because I see the Americans competing a lot, whereas we're not really swimming right now.
Okay, and your name, sorry, can you just share with me your name?
Kate Walsh.
Hi, Kate. Yeah, so just knowing that there's comparison and you're seeing other people do training like it's normal, and we're not allowed to even be in a gym, right? Well, with changing restrictions. So comparison, perhaps being scared that you're falling behind or you're missing out. Thank you so much for jumping in. So yeah, the fear for sure is a big part here. Does anybody else have anything they could put in the chat, or maybe share what they've heard? I invite you to participate. I'd love to know what you think about the current situation. Because it was a fantastic example. Okay, Noah, you want to jump in?
Hi. I've seen my teammates progressively stop coming to dryland. We were at 20 kids coming, and now we're at 6. And it was last day, and they just stopped coming. And they're all just saying they're too depressed to come, and it's boring, and it's sad, and they don't like training anymore.
Okay, thanks for jumping in and sharing that. So we're seeing a lack of motivation and participation. We're seeing that people don't want to be in dryland. It's getting boring. They're upset about it. And you're seeing people actually disengage. Okay. Thanks for jumping in on that, because I've noticed that too, where some people are just quitting things altogether. Tegan or Tegan, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but I want to make sure I did it right. I love your comment that everything will be back to normal soon, but it's not. You're right, it isn't normal yet. We don't have vaccines are coming, etc. There is light at the end of the tunnel, but we're still on this phased reentry plan. And there is people saying, oh, it's going to be back, everything's going to be great, but no, not yet. So thank you for that. And Isaac, you agreed with that statement. So really interesting feedback. Is there anything else that you've maybe heard that we've missed or that we haven't been able to highlight or talk about?
Hey,
Hi, Cooper and Jacob, jump on in.
So me and my brother have been really lucky to have like a home gym.
Yeah.
So we've been able to keep active, and I've been going like every day, like, you know, just trying to keep in shape and like, you know, maybe, I don't know, train different, right? So I think our mental wellness is still being able to do an activity like that has been fairly well.
Okay, so for you, there's been some thriving because you've had accessibility to that training, to a somewhat level of a training environment where you could do physical activity and there's something that you have access to. So thank you for sharing that, because I've heard that from some athletes too, that thank gosh I've had something that I've been able to do in order to keep me fit, or if I'm feeling a little anxious or maybe overwhelmed, I go jump on, the treadmill. Well, I have a spin bike behind me in my hallway. You can't see it, but anytime I've been feeling a little bit uncertain during this whole thing, I just go jump on my spin bike. It's like, oh, that's been helpful. So great point, guys, and thanks for jumping in on that about, there are things that have worked, and there's definitely been things that you're missing. And I think I'm echoing what Isaac's saying here, but like just being out of the pool, and you're missing out on that technique and working on that consistently. So thanks for pointing that out. And I think being out of the pool has really affected all of us in some level. Connor jumped in too, and how COVID can affect your future. Wow, what a powerful statement, because fear is there, it exists. And I think at some point we've all had a little bit of fear. Maybe we haven't called it that, but that's completely normal. And knowing that, is it ever really going to go away? And it makes swimming potentially uncertain, right? So thanks, Connor, for jumping in on that. Really great feedback. Dakota, a lot of your friends talk down on our premier's decisions. Okay, so hearing negativity about what's going on in our province, thanks, Dakota, too, and hearing different statements than maybe what you're experiencing or what you agree or disagree with. Absolutely. Okay, and then there's a lot of Zoom meets. Yeah, so many meetings, right? So many online things that we need to be part of, and it can be super, super confusing, and it can also be really fatiguing and exhausting. So great points to you all, and thank you. I encourage you to keep sharing as I continue to ask questions. I think hearing what other people are saying is so powerful too, because not only does it normalize and validate what you might be experiencing, but it just gives you a little bit of a glimpse that we're all kind of on different wavelengths, and we've all kind of had moments where some of these things have been present perhaps in our thought processes or even our social connections. Great job, you all. I'm going to invite you here in a minute to bring up some more statements. So Jackie, if you could go to the next slide, please. So I have this wonderful little infographic here. I'm calling it the COVID roller coaster, but there is a fancy term for this model, and I'm not going to acknowledge that today. I do have the reference if any of you are excited or interested in that. But the reason we're sharing this model today is kind of to show you how navigating this pandemic is very similar to riding a roller coaster. Okay, so as you can see, we're here on this graph, we have the emotional response on one side of the axis, and we have the phases on the other of what you can experience. Some of you in this pandemic may have felt that others were doing great while you were struggling, vice versa. We mentioned that before. You may have also been coasting, feeling okay, and others may have been going through the big loop-de-loop or getting fearful before you take that big drop. So what this model does demonstrate and show is a general trend of when people are experiencing extreme events such as natural disasters and global pandemics. Okay, and Paige, great comment. It's not fun though, like a roller coaster. For some of us, we don't like roller coasters. It's uneasy. It's why would I ever want to go on a roller coaster? Thanks for bringing that up, right? So even though this pandemic model shows about how we experience natural disaster, it's kind of an infographic to perhaps how we might experience a pandemic. So we saw a bit of a threat happen where we might have felt things early when we first started hearing about COVID. We didn't really know what it was. And as you can see here, when the impact went down, we've experienced a whole bunch of different emotions in March when it came down. And then we went up because we came in this, we rallied together, we got through as much as we could, we brought numbers down, we worked together, and the phrase work all in this together became really representative of us as a small community and as a larger community to how we were going to navigate that. We saw lots of Zoom calls, we saw your teams coming together doing different things, and it was very hopeful. There was lots of optimism, okay, and lots of good things happening. So then perhaps we went into a bit of a delusionment phase where some of us have experienced perhaps negative emotions, okay? And then as things went on over the course of the summer, there's been other feelings and emotions along with it. So a couple things I want to bring up to you. we are in a second wave of the fatigue, which isn't obviously shown on this model. But what I would like you to do is think about with this second wave, if you were to look at the model and think about the emotions you see and perhaps what you're experiencing, where would you say where you are right now? Okay, so just look at some of these words. Thanks, Paige, for that question. Optimism is positivity. Optimism is another word for a positive attitude, looking at the world half full, having a hopeful stance on how you feel. That's what optimism means in this. So thanks, Jackie, for jumping in on that. Okay, so I just want you to think about where you are right now, and knowing that, you know, we are at there is light at the end of the tunnel with vaccines and information and technology, but we don't know what that timeline is. So if you were to think about a word right now, I'm not going to ask you to share this. I just want you to think about it. What word would you feel or see on the model that you would relate to right now? Okay, so no matter where you are on this model, you're not doing it wrong. We're all experiencing stress, even trauma sometimes. We experience these things in different ways, very difficultly, and on our own timelines. So I can't stress that enough, okay? I also want to share with you, I once heard this quote that comparison is the thief of joy. And I love that quote because when we start comparing ourselves to other people, we miss out on an opportunity to experience life for ourselves. And we know that others may be at various stages right now, and it's okay to be exactly where you are. And as a young athlete, this might be a lot to process for where you are, you know, just as you're experiencing the fatigue of pandemic as well. And I know that some of you may have even experienced a lot of these emotions multiple times in the last 10 months. I know I have, for sure. Okay, so I just want to share one more thing with you as we're on this roller coaster. I know we all want to get off. We're done. We're like, it's time to, the ride's over, right? But I urge you to be patient and be patient with yourself and take care and make good choices for you so that you can stay as healthy as possible. Okay, so just take a moment of that. And I think Steve has given some great feedback too in the chat, so please take a look. And I love Jacob and Cooper, you chiming in here saying, you know, really wanting to celebrate feeling strength and positivity. I think that's definitely a hopeful attitude that we can continue to share with others, and it can be very motivating as well. Okay, Jackie, if you wouldn't mind the slide here. Perfect. So most of you have phones or access to electronic devices. You probably know how to work things better than me. And Elaine and I found this great infographic and we wanted to share. And we right now, as athletes, we've experienced a lot of different things that we may have lost. And we chose this battery to show you that we perhaps have been feeling charged or uncharged. We've lost some charge. Some of us are on like low here, 10% battery as we navigate things. Others might be full. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But what I would like to hear from you now, if you would feel comfortable either jumping in or jumping in the chat, is what have you lost due to COVID? What might you be sad about? What might you be grieving over? Are you choked about the competitive season? Are you, missing out on your friends, additional competitions, missing your coaches, working on things, training environment? Oh, motivation, thanks. Yeah, so the loss of motivation, big one. I can honestly tell you that's the biggest thing I've seen with my athletes across the board is motivation. Oh yeah, and just missing and seeing your family members that are outside your circle or your cohort. Spending times with friends or family. Oh, Isaac, brilliant. Balance. So just having a balance. Okay, so those are all great things, and as you keep on sharing, I will highlight them. So thanks for jumping in, not seeing your friends in person, so having limited accessibility. Yeah, so a couple things that we've kind of discovered along the way as we've experienced some of these losses is the fact that many of us have felt that we have to feel like we feel like we have to be on all the time, being on all these Zoom calls, being on for school, whether you're in school or you're on online learning, and we're finding that we're depleted of our energy. So instead of our battery being full as it is here on the one side of the screen, a lot of us find that we're losing our charge really quickly. And I don't know about you, but sometimes when I see my battery level on my phone go below 10, I get a little concerned. I'm like, where is my charger? I need to charge up. What's going to happen if I lose my phone, lose my connectivity? I get a little bit of anxiety when I go below 10. That's not true, probably 20. I start to get a little panicked. Okay, so this analogy is a great way to think of yourself and your mental wellness too. All right, so we've maintained charges, we know how to stay charged, we're going to talk about that too, but also this concept of discharging and what happens when we lose battery and how do we safely work through that. So for some of us, that might be nutrition, it might be getting extra sleep, finding a safe space to talk about things, and even just reaching out to friends via Zoom or via FaceTime, finding those ways to do it in a safe way. Okay, and that's where the self-awareness piece comes in with your mental wellness. So do you know where you are? Do you know how you feel, where you are on the battery infographic? Are you supercharged? You're good, you're okay, you're on? Or are you feeling perhaps like you're losing energy? And do you know which self-care strategies works for you? Okay, do you know what strategies work and then what you might need from others in order to help you with some of those strategies? So I encourage you all to think about that. And then the last thing I want to bring up is it's normal for this to change daily. And you might feel hopeless, sometimes helpless, but what I want to remind you of, it's good to reach out to your family and friends when you're starting to know that you're going, below that 50% mark. And then simply by reaching out to people and finding ways to connect and fill your charge a little bit, you might even be able to start thinking about, what are you excited for? What are you hopeful for? Okay, and I would encourage you all to now jump into the chat. I don't want to say once COVID is over, but once perhaps we start to move with a little bit more normalcy, what are you looking forward to? I cannot wait till the day that I get to walk in the pool and smell chlorine. That is like my biggest thing right now, is just I am dying to smell chlorine because that means I'm getting closer to the pool. And then when I get to take my shoes off at Kinsman in the entrance and put my sandals on, my flip-flops, and walk the deck, I cannot wait for that. That feeling to me is just so exciting. So I would love to hear what you are excited about. So Jacob says sports, so just being able to compete. Absolutely. Okay, great. What else are you looking forward to? Seeing your friends, seeing your swim friends at swim practice. Okay, great. Thanks, Connor, for that. What else are you excited about? Sports opening back up, being able to get back in the pool and the gyms. Yeah. So these are things that are going to help you charge your battery too, right? And just being able to look forward to these things, being free. Yeah, having some normalcy. Setting goals. Oh, thank you for that, Kate. Kate. Being able to just set some goals in relation to your training. Just swimming, seeing friends, and all these are such simple things, right? And just one day being able to do a little bit of normal things again. So thanks for all jumping in on that. I really appreciate that, because I think we're going to value those opportunities when they come, and knowing that we can be hopeful. Those are things that charge us, and that can help build a little bit of energy each day, and each day we reach out to other people. Next slide, please, Jackie. All right, big topic here, resilience. I love the Avengers. I love all the Avengers movies. I can't help it. I am a sucker for these movies. And I thought I would share this picture with you because the Avengers to me can represent resilience. They each have their own unique stories. They each have things that separate them from another. But I want to make something well known. Although this is fictional and it's in the movies, it's one thing. Resilience isn't, in our world, in the non-Avenger world, is not about this magical quality like the Avengers have, that you each have, okay? Resilience is a beautiful thing, and we have been given an extraordinary opportunity to practice it. So what does that mean? Well, that means a couple things. One, recognizing what resilience is. Resilience isn't just bouncing back and getting through a hard time. It's about being able to recognize when you change something, or when something's challenging, and maybe when things aren't working out in your favor. Okay, we do experience challenge, and we know that we build resilience when we feel like we're supported. And it's kind of cool that the Avengers have a huge support system to help with their challenges, right? If anyone wants to jump in what they know about the Avengers, put it in the chat. What special qualities do they have? And what's really cool about some of these qualities is you have them too. They not be the magical superhero ability to fly like Iron Man, but you all have these unique set of qualities that make you who you are, that are you already have in your back pocket to help you build resilience. Okay, so one more thing, resilience isn't something you always have. It's not this innate power to always do something magical, but it's there, and sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. And when you're in certain environments, it may even come out more. And you're going to learn about that too as you grow up. And then the last thing, resilience doesn't mean that you don't show emotion. In fact, resilience means that you're actually experiencing sometimes a lot of emotion, or that it's there while you're building resilience or being resilient. Okay, so I just want you to all know that some of us have this misconception that resilience means not showing emotion. In fact, it's the opposite. Most of us do show emotion when we are resilient. Okay, so I just want to keep on this topic, and I want to ask you one more thing. Can you think of a time when you have been resilient through COVID? Okay, so we know what it is, we know what it isn't. You don't have to put this in the chat. This can be a private reflection. If you want to chat, put it in the chat. Absolutely jump in if you feel comfortable. But I just want you to think back and even write it on your paper. When has there been a time during this pandemic where you felt resilient? Resilience looks differently to each one of us, okay? So we all have these different skills, we all have different experiences. Some of us, it's making it to school on time, that's resilience. Some of us, it's being brave to ask questions. Some of us, it's having the courage to ask for help. That's a sign of resilience. Some of us, it's been reaching out to other people, okay? So just take about 10 more seconds, and I want you to think about that. So some of you may have even had to quarantine once, if not twice, and support others through quarantine, through COVID itself. Some of you may experience different forms of loss with COVID, and I just want you to be mindful that through that, you probably have shown a great amount of resilience. Jackie, will you go to the next slide, please? So how do we build it? It's a hot topic word. It's all the rage in research. You're hearing it everywhere. Let's be resilient. But how do we build resilience? So I put a couple infographics up that I think can relate to you. So number one, for us, I think the important thing is practicing positivity and gratitude. You start your day off with that. It sets your whole day in a really good direction. I use a gratitude journal. That's something I've encouraged my sister, who's a teacher, to do with her students. And they do that every morning. They go either and write it on their Google Meet board or on their classroom board. They start their day off with what they're grateful for. And it started to change the way they look at their day. Okay, and sometimes simply by practicing gratitude and thinking about what we're thankful for, it can really put things in perspective. And that makes it easier to identify challenges that are coming down the pipe. Okay, so readiness, being ready to take on what's coming at you, and working on readiness too, and being able to take on challenges. That's resilience. So being able to stay in the present. When we think about readiness, being present focused, that comes into play. And all of you are capable of that because you've done that in training. When you've approached a hard set, you've done it behind the blocks, and then really narrowing in on how to take that present focus thinking and work on practicing your focus. And just like focus, we want to keep in mind that you want to be able to turn it on and off, just like a light bulb, like I have here, okay, on the slide. So resilience, by being able to focus on one thing and manage distractions when you are going through challenging times, that can help you build resilience as well. Being able to practice these things for small periods of time is really important, because it's not just going to happen overnight. I think the more you practice and engage in mental skills, and simply by working on these things, you're becoming more resilient, because you're practicing how to handle any form of challenge. Okay, I put the weights on there to remind you to strengthen your confidence. Think about what you're really good at. Celebrate those qualities that just help you perform at your best, whether it be in school, help you get through the day, help you communicate with your friends. What are those things that set you apart? If you're a good listener, how are you bringing that into the equation? How are you working on that strength with yourself for other people? Okay. If you take constructive criticism well, how are you working on that strength? So think about all these great strengths you have and how they relate to you as a confident person and you as a confident athlete. And lastly, I put that picture of us with the world in the middle. So not being afraid to use our support systems. Grab someone's hand metaphorically. I know we can't do it with physical distancing, but you don't have to social distance. Okay, so reaching out to other people, asking for help helps us build resilience. And we know in the research that when you feel like there's support, even though you may not see it, you're more likely to be a little more resilient because you know the support is there. And the last thing I want to highlight is what we call growth mindset. Some of you may have heard this phrase before, and what it is, it's the belief in the ability to learn new things and try new things and not be fixed, that you can grow and learn and develop anything. And failure is okay because it helps you learn and grow. Okay, so these are a couple things you can work on to build resilience. And I know that all of you are working on it because we're in the middle of a pandemic and we're paddling along this little boat here in the storm. So please know that it's a great opportunity for you to practice these mental skills and these traits, because it's going to only help you in other areas of your life. And the moment you get behind the blocks, you get to put this all into action when it comes to play. If you wouldn't mind changing to the next slide, Jackie. Okay, so with those unique qualities that like the Avengers have, I want to share that we are kind of like plants. Okay, we all have strengths and weaknesses, and some of us require different conditions to grow. We handle things in our own way, we experience emotions differently, and I've chosen these three to just kind of reflect and encourage you to think about, if you were a plant, what kind of plant would you be? When do you grow best? What adaptations do you have to survive? What makes you you? When we experience wind or challenge, what helps you through it? Okay, so I just want you to think about that. Plants are pretty resilient things. Plants, trees, shrubs. They all grow on their own timelines. They require different things. Paige, absolutely you can be a flower. Any type of flower. Flowers plant, for sure. What kind of plant would you be? What do you need to grow? When do you thrive? How much watering do you need from other people to grow? I just want you to think about that. Okay, and I know I might be like, why is she getting us to think about how we would be as plants? But when you start thinking about what your strengths and weaknesses are and what kind of support you need, that's really powerful information that helps you thrive later on. I know for me, I'm kind of like a cactus sometimes. I'm short. When I grow, I do really well at night. I come out, I do all my work at night. I feel invigorated, and that's when I grow. Okay. Jacob, cactus too. Cool. Sunflower, bright, open. Yeah, thanks guys for jumping in. That's great. So Jacob and Cooper, you're both cactuses or just one of you a cactus? You can put that in the chat. So just think about what you would be, okay? So we all experience stress differently too, just like some of these plants, and we respond differently to stress. So with that comes many emotions, and we're going to take a look at that here on the next slide, Jackie, if you please. So do you know that we can experience approximately 34,000 different emotions? I chose this emotion wheel to share with you today because I think it can be a handy tool to reflect in self-awareness. So all too often we work on pushing through emotions or resetting or adapting or coping with emotions, and sometimes just being aware and sitting with the emotions and acknowledging what we're feeling can be very powerful, because what that does is it encourages us to name and accept and move through the emotions we're feeling in a healthy way. Okay, so feel free to screenshot this if you'd like. I think it's a fantastic way to talk maybe about how you're feeling, because we have primary emotions here, secondary emotions, and some tertiary emotions, which means like there's many levels. So we might be feeling a little bit of anger, but we might just be jealous of someone and we're taking it out in an angry way. And maybe we're just envious of what they're doing, and because we're not. But also, you know, fear is one of those things that represents itself and masks in many emotions. But yet at the same time too, we have joy, which can be because we're proud of something and we're excited at the opportunity to be involved in anything that comes our way, and hopeful about something that's maybe coming in the future. So I wanted to share this with you just to give you some different vocabulary to use to explain how you feel. And this can be very helpful when you're working with your friends, your coaches, your teammates, and just saying, you know, how you feel, even talking to your parents. I think this can be a fantastic tool to use to share how you feel. Okay, so if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, Jackie. Despite, you know, the pandemic being around us for 10 months now, we're all experiencing things differently, and we don't know when we're struggling, and perhaps it can be very easy to miss when other people are struggling. So what I would like you to think about is, what advice would you give to your friends or teammates if you knew they were struggling? And this is just going to be a private reflection question. I just want you to take 30 seconds to answer. In the next little while, you might be a listening ear for many other people. You may have already been in the last 10 months. And I just want you to think about, what advice would you give to your friends or teammates if you knew they were struggling? Let's take 10 seconds here. Okay. So I'm sure a lot of you have said some really wonderful things. If you want to jump in the chat, please put it in the chat. Jackie, I'm going to ask you to go to the next slide. So with acknowledging how we feel and helping others, and learning how to navigate helping others, I thought I would just talk about coping here for 1 minute. How do we cope with the challenging of emotions or struggle for ourselves and other people? So number one, we always want you to think about maintaining realistic expectations of where you are. So the fact that we're in a pandemic and knowing that we're all experiencing different timelines is really important to acknowledge. And that's kind of why I started with that. I wanted you all to know, you know, it's normal to be where you are. Don't worry about comparing yourself to other people. It's okay to just be where you are right now. So knowing that you are in a challenging time and so are other people is number one of utmost importance. Number two, just being aware of the emotions that you currently are feeling, and then how to regulate or how to adapt them. So how to acknowledge them and then work through it. Now, some of you do this all the time when you're getting prepped for a race. You've practiced this with simply by dealing with your nerves, okay? So a couple things you can do to work through coping strategies. Number one is practicing your mindfulness or your meditation, working on your deep breathing. All of you, I'm sure, have done that before you went on to the stepping up to the block in your pre-race routine. Elaine and I are going to put some breathing exercises available on the website here shortly, probably in the next week or so, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Also, there's some great apps that you can use, Calm, Headspace. There's a great Headspace documentary on Netflix right now for those of you who may be interested. There's many things we can do to cope with our emotions, and they all require a little bit of practice. So I think also recognizing it's a process, and it's one of those things that we don't just get good at right away. So don't give up on the mindfulness, don't give up on the staying present or the meditation. Practice it. I have a balance board here in my living room, and some days I can't balance at all. Other days it takes those extra couple minutes to set in. So these are different things you can do. And if you do need more resources or want some information, please email Jackie, reach out to Swim Alberta, and we can make sure we have them available to you. Okay. And the last thing I want to do is really remind you about the importance of focusing on the process to this, not the outcome. Okay. This pandemic is a process, and how we work through it doesn't have an outcome timeline. So setting goals for yourself that are daily, maybe for the next 5 minutes, that's all you can do, and that's just fine. So just remembering it's all about process over outcome. And I think swimming works in the same way. As much as you always want to focus on a best time, sometimes you got to think about what you need to do in order to get the time you want, not the time. So process over outcome. Okay, next slide, please, Jackie. Couple things I want to remind you of. Taking care of yourself. So what self-care means to you? What do you need? Sleep, exercise, nutrition. What does that require for you? Is there certain things that help you thrive? And if so, what are they? Using your routines that you know work. Okay, so just like getting up in the morning, you know what helps you get to school really quick. Finding routines in your area, in your life, in different areas that help you be the best version of yourself. What works when? I always want to encourage you to connect with other people socially. I think that's super important. And controlling your controllables. Okay, we're going to do an exercise on that here in about 2 minutes. So I want you to empower yourself to think about when you're working through challenging times, what are the things you know that work? You know yourselves better than anyone. You know what strengths you have, you know what skills you have in your toolbox, what works for you. And that's going to help you cope when things get tough and not being afraid to reach out to other people. Jackie, if you don't mind. Okay, so I have a couple slides I just want to show. Feel free to screenshot them. I think they're great tools to either think about how you're feeling or even share with others. So this is a great slide here that uses colors to just kind of talk about where you are. And sometimes by using these words, you can have a meaningful conversation with someone else. If you maybe recognize that you're feeling a little yellow right now, might not be the time to ask to have a conversation, or you might require that you need one if you're feeling a little red and you need to just have some quiet. Okay, so feel free to take a screenshot of that. This will be up posted as well for our webinars under Swim Alberta website if you do want to look at them more closely. Next slide, please, Jackie. Also, I think this is a great infographic. It kind of explains the battery metaphor, which I've shared with you. So different things that use energy, that take energy for you. School is a big one for you all. Health, maybe. Missing your friends, not being able to do the things you normally do. Those things take energy. But then looking at the bottom to recognize what helps you recharge, what helps you fill up the battery. And just recognizing when to use those. That infographic will also be up. Jackie, next slide, please. How to check your battery, how to just see how you're feeling. I love these little pictures here because I think they're great ways to just think about your day too. If you look at the one slide that says, how are you currently feeling? It gives you even a question or something to give you a little bit of direction. So if you're only feeling okay, how can you make your day a tiny bit better? What is that one thing? Maybe it's reaching out to a friend, having a good lunch. What makes you better? Okay. And then, as you can see, if you're empty, what's draining you? What boundaries do I need to put in place? What are my non-negotiables? And what's one thing I can do to fill me up? So what's that one thing? It might be getting a good sleep. It might be talking to a friend. What can you do to build a little bit of charge? Okay. Next slide, Jackie, please. So the activity today is to empower you to think about what is in your control and what is outside your control. So I want you to all draw this wonderful little donut here on your piece of paper. Oh, Paige, you have an infographic in the classroom. That's fantastic. So your teachers are sharing that with you. Great. So what I want you to do is think of this little Tim Hortons donut here, and most of us like donuts, so I thought it'd be a good little metaphor for you. What is outside of your control and what is in your control? So the inside of the donut, I want you to think of and list everything that is inside your control. And what is outside of your control, not being able to return to swimming, government restrictions, COVID rules, etc. I want you to be able to label both and brainstorm some ideas. Okay, and think about maybe what's frustrating, or think about the things that are helping you. So all these check-in tools, the infographics and this activity can help you assess your readiness and also get a gauge of how you're feeling and how your teammates are coping. You know, consider using these for yourselves, share them with your family, share them with your friends. I know on Mondays I check in, I think about my week, what my week's gonna be like, what I need to get done. And you know, try to use these to help you have conversations. I think that it can be really, really helpful and meaningful if you know where other people are at too. If you are trying to cope, the conversations that you have can be more meaningful, richer, and it can be very helpful to be honest with currently how you're feeling if you have an infographic to help explain things. Okay, so this activity, controllables, is meant to just acknowledge what is in your control, to give you a little bit of confidence to be like, I'm in control of myself. These are the things I can do. And these are the things I can focus on, because everything outside your control creates that uncertainty, perhaps can be limiting, and can often drain energy if you put too much energy into worrying about it. And it's completely normal to do so, but simply by shifting focus to what's in your control can give you a lot more empowerment. It can help you feel better about things, and it can also help manage some of that uncertainty you perhaps feel. Okay, so the last thing I want to share with you today, Jackie, I'm going to get you to change the slide, is I want you to take a look at the kids' help phone. I want you to screenshot this number. If there is ever a time you need some help and you perhaps can't talk to the people closest around you and you want to talk to someone anonymously, the kids' help phone is a great available resource. You may not need it, but one of your friends might. Okay, and all you got to do is text connect to 686868 and someone will be there to talk to you anonymously. It's a great resource. It's fabulous if you need help or information, not just for yourself, but for other people in your life if you need a little bit of extra help with coping with challenges. Okay, so I encourage you all to have that information. So the last thing I want to touch on is please feel free to take that activity and finish it on your own time. Really think about those controllables for you, and know that there may be things that change in and out of your control as we work through this pandemic a little longer, like when you're getting access to a vaccine, when school's in, maybe your quarters, what your responsibilities are, all those different things in your life. So there's many ways to answer those questions. Okay, so I know I blew through the last part pretty quick, but I just wanted to give 2 minutes to open it up if anyone has questions. Jackie's going to stop the recording now.